Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. Welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and the membership are in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and yeah, they really matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's second half, shall we? Today's first part of the upload. On January 12th of 2006, a witness walked into his home to find a devil-like creature confronting his 6-year-old Labrador dog. The creature seemed to be an unusual combination of monkey, dog, and devil. Suddenly, it sprang to its hind legs and ran, nearly pushing us over to get out of the open door I had just come through. This creature had long fangs, a monkey-like tail, extremely bright glowing eyes. In another report, an Ohio woman driving through Roanoke, Virginia at about 2:30 in the morning reported a similar encounter in the late 90s while driving on a dark road at night and forced to take a detour due to road construction. She had driven past a road sign that read Red Wolf Crossing close to Elizabeth City when the creature, which was not a wolf, leapt in front of her car. The creature was all black with very short, sleek fur, pointed ears with a long, thin tail. She described it as cat-like, and yet not like any cat she'd ever seen. The snout was flatter than a dog's and more like a cat. The creature was very tall because she saw it when it was standing on its hind legs, and it was well over 6 feet. She indicated its torso looked very much like that of a very thin human, and its head resembled a large monkey, but with a pointy beard. However, the creature's hind legs were like that of a wild cat or a dog. It was very muscular and thin. Later, the woman checked with the U.S. Game and Wildlife Department, who told her there was no black wolves in the area, but suggested she had seen a feral dog, feral meaning wild, or a wolf-dog hybrid. But the woman emphasized that it was not a wolf or a dog. The woman explained the creature may have been on all fours just before leaping. The creature leapt with such force and height that it only took one bound to cross both lanes of the highway. This indicates the creature leapt more than 18 feet or 6 meters to get across the road. Dogs and wolves do not leap this far in one jump. Even larger animals, such as deer, usually take several bounds to leap across the road. These descriptions are somewhat similar to the infamous Dover demon, which began on April 21st, 1977 in Dover, Massachusetts. This next encounter comes to us from Illinois. I had just turned 60 back in November. Anyway, I was 14 or 15 at the time, and my buddy and myself went hunting up on Burlington Northern Track, between the town of Dayton and Wedren. We had just gotten some heavy snow. We got about 10 to 12 inches. We made it all the way up to where the Wedren silica pits were, and we turned and went across the tracks. Came back the other side, and we were pretty well gassed out because it was a long walk in the deep snow. Anyway, we got about a half a mile from the state cemetery, and we're not talking. We're winded. Anyway, I heard something growling and snarling, and my friend Jimmy walked up behind me, and we're both looking around. There was this large canine creature, and there was a 4 to 5 strand barbed wire fence, and it was on the other side along the timberline. There was a big orange moon coming up on the east side of the river. The river runs north to south. So this creature comes up to the edge of the fence. I had a 20 gauge single shot, and I believe Jimmy had a 12 gauge single shot. I had mine cocked, and I imagine he had his cocked as well. And it stood up, and it was about 4 to 5 feet over the top of this fence. It was huge. It was terrifying. Anyway, it had red eyes. It was just as red as it could be. And it was not from the moonlight, because the moon was still on the east side of the river coming up. We took off, and we usually cut down the east side of the cemetery and went down through the woods back to Burlington North Track. But we were too scared to go that way, so we went around the cemetery on the west side and went all the way to his house. His dad and his buddies were down in the basement playing cards. We ran down there and told them what happened. Of course, they didn't believe us. We were so terrified. This will never leave my brain. Today's third encounter. Back in 1991, Hillsborough County, Florida, my mom, one of my cousins, and myself were coming back from a school concert. At the time, we lived in a rural part of the county. We were 3 miles from our house when my mother hit the brakes really hard. I was in the back seat sleeping, and my cousin was sleeping in the front passenger side. I heard a hard thump, and then my mom hit the gas. I asked what happened, and she screams out, "I just hit a werewolf." My cousin's eyes were wide open, and she wouldn't talk at all. My mother told me more details when we got home. Before she hit it, she noticed a car on the other side of the road up ahead. When she came upon it, a creature jumped right in front of the car. She was going 45 when she hit the brakes. It landed on the hood of the car. Its face landed on the windshield. It had black fur and red eyes and a long mouth, open to reveal a large set of teeth. Definitely not a guy in a suit. It pushed itself off the car, leaving claw marks. My mother told me that the last time there was one in the area was over 20 years ago. I believe this was in 2001. I worked maintenance between 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. For about a week, I heard weird sounds coming from the back of the building, which has thick brush. Not the typical animal sounds. One night I heard a loud crash coming from the side entrance. I investigated to find a large garbage can was thrown on top of the roof and it had rolled off. I was thinking kids until I got a strong whiff of something nasty. It definitely was not trash. Then I was thinking skunk ape. I quickly picked up the trash and went back into the building. The next night I was traveling between the two buildings when a thick brush started shaking. I heard this animal making a horrible noise, like it was being choked. I ran into the lighted parking lot and turned around and saw a large humanoid shape appear out of the brush, and it went back in. A couple nights later, my mother was waiting to pick me up when she saw a large shape come in under the light on the side entrance. It suddenly noticed her and went back into the shadows. A week passed without incident. Again, my mother was waiting to pick me up when she heard a couple of dogs barking close by. She turned to see a large, hooded man walking behind the car. He ran across the parking lot on the side of the road. The dogs belonged to a couple at the trailer nearby. These dogs travel in packs of 4 to 5 and weigh between 60 and 90 pounds. They were running around the man, barking and snapping at him. One of the large dogs got a hold of his arm. Then my mother saw the man's face. It was not a man under the hood. A head of a black wolf became visible. The unearthly being shook and then threw the dog like a doll. The rest of the dogs ran for their lives. The hooded creature walked into the nearby woods. The next night was a full moon, and I heard this unearthly howl. We had never heard and saw it again. Now a housing project occupies the land where it once lived. The next two parts of today's upload are going to be looking at possible Dogman Sasquatch UFO extraterrestrial connection. Today's fourth part of the upload, Uniontown, Pennsylvania, October 25th, 1973, 9 p.m. 15 people observed a very large, red, spherical object hovering low in the sky, which began to descend toward a pasture. The witnesses and two boys proceeded up the field and observed a white dome-shaped object on the ground that illuminated the area and was making a loud whirling sound. It was estimated at about 100 feet in diameter. They were about 250 feet from the object and about 75 feet from the fence line. Walking along the fence line, two figures, 7 to 9 feet tall, covered in hair and arms hanging past their knees and displaying glowing green eyes. The creatures were fired upon. First tracers were shot overhead, and then live ammo was used. The larger of the two creatures turned towards the other, almost touching it, and at the same time the object in the field disappeared and the sound stopped. The creatures slowly walked toward the woods. One boy had already ran home. The other two had left the field, went to a farmhouse, and moved the family members to the neighbor's home and called the state police. When a trooper arrived, he and the main witness went to the site, and where the object had landed, there was a glowing area that, according to the trooper, was about 150 feet in diameter. He said he could read a newspaper from the amount of light that was emitted. The farm animals refused to go into the area. One witness reported that before they left the field, the larger of the two creatures was seen about 10 feet behind them. He shot at it and struck it. Later that night, the investigation team, which included the main witness Stephen, Stan Gordon, Dave Baker, Dave Smith, George Lutz, and Dennis Smetzer, arrived in the area. Radiation levels were normal. Glowing area now gone, but the animals still would not go near that spot. Strange events now began to take place. A farmhouse several hundred feet from them was seen by some in the party to suddenly light up like daylight for several seconds. A bull in the field and a dog seemed unconcerned about the group and were looking into the woods. The main witness, a rather large individual, while being questioned, suddenly begins to growl, throwing his father and investigator, George Lutz, toward the ground. The man ran into the field, growling like an animal and emitting screams, one that was nearly inhuman. His own dog approached him as to attack, then runs off whimpering. The man suddenly collapses to the ground. Then two of the investigating team begin to complain that they're having trouble breathing. Suddenly the air is filled with a strong odor that was compared to rotten eggs. The man, as he came out of what happened, appeared to be almost in a trance-like state. He began talking about visions he saw about the end of the world. He claimed to have seen an evil specter, attired all in black. He had heard his name called from the woods. Smeltzer felt faint, and Dave Baker was lightheaded. Stan Gordon and Stephen smelled the sulfurous smell, and none of the surroundings or equipment could supply. Today's final part of the upload. A couple of years ago, I had been out with friends until about 1 a.m. I was driving home the way I always go. I have a heavy foot, and I was enjoying an exciting drive on the empty roads. As I was coming up to a nice S-curve, I noticed what I thought to be a deer moving through the brush to my right, about to cross the road in front of me. I braked hard to avoid a collision, as the quote-unquote deer crossed the road in front of me. I was just clearing the bend and could see the road ahead. Immediately, I saw the glowing cashmere blue light brightly emanating from the masked face helmet of a tall man standing on the left side of the road. He, in quotations, must have stood 7 feet tall. The quotation deer ran up to the man and stopped directly in front of him. In the next seconds, my headlights fell directly on the pair, and I had slowed down to a speed about 15 to 20 miles an hour to avoid a collision and had a clear, direct view. The next second lasted an hour in my mind. The creature was similar to the deer in size and overall shape. It had dark brown-gray covering that I want to call fur, but was more leathery, I guess. It had the head similar to a dog with an elongated snout and short ears. It had the build of a greyhound with long ears supporting a small, slender frame. The legs were strange. They may have been bent backwards, but I couldn't be sure. I recall that it moved strangely as it crossed the road. It had no visible tail. The man was tall, as I said before, with a human build. He was wearing a black suit that had several tools and pockets, similar to something a Navy SEAL would wear during the nighttime ops. He was covered from head to toe. Gloves, boots, mask, all connected. There was no flesh exposed, just like an astronaut's suit. He had a visor over his eyes that glowed a soft, velvety blue, brightly. The visor was rectangular, with rounded edges and positioned to be consistent with the human anatomy. The light obscured the shape of the head somewhat, but again, it seemed to have the head consistent with human anatomy from the straightforward perspective. He was watching me as closely as I was watching him. As I passed slowly 7 feet away, we made eye contact, and that blue glow followed me in my rearview mirror until I was to the next bend and he was out of sight. At this point, I was very unsettled, and another unsettling thing happened. I felt him call to me. It was like a feeling more than words. It wanted me to come back. It was a strong urge to turn around, mixed with feelings of peace and tranquility. Suddenly, I realized that I had unconsciously brought my car to a stop. This frightened me to the core, and it still does. I immediately floored the car and blew the stop sign at the end of the road and raced all the way home. In the years that has passed, several small incidents have occurred that could be and were written off as just strange. However, a pattern was developing. It wasn't until 4 years later I was able to confirm my suspicions. My girlfriend and I moved to a secluded location in Upper Bucks County, PA. We used to smoke cigarettes on the front porch at night. One winter, we noticed a very bright flash of white light coming from the backwoods behind the house. It was so bright that it could have been lightning, but there was no clouds in the sky. We went to the backyard to investigate, becoming very suspicious of a possible intruder taking pictures in our woods. The flash continued intermittently, but with no discernible pattern. I then realized that the light was actually off the ground at least 10 feet. This made us uncomfortable, and we went inside. This became a recurring phenomenon at our home until one night we decided to find the source. We took a gun and a giant spotlight and tried to find it. We drove around the back of our property and discovered that it was definitely coming from our woods. We listened and watched in silence, but heard nothing, and could only see the light in the sky above, not directly towards us. We then drove back to our driveway and began to see it clearly again. I tried to flash it to find out with a spotlight, but had no luck. It simply flashed as it pleased with no reaction to us. Then we heard a familiar sound. It sounded as if a 747 was going overhead. I expected to see a low-flying airliner pass overhead, but was instead shocked at what I saw. A triangular craft passed slowly overhead, maybe 100 feet above us. It had three flashing lights at each point, and several smaller glowing orange lights in between. It was making a sound of a large jet airplane. However, if it had been a jet, it would have deafened us at the distance it passed. It also moved much slower than any type of jet-propelled craft. It was approximately 30 feet wide and had cubic features. The craft moved over us and paused briefly directly over where we thought the source of the light had come from. It then vanished without a sound, and there were no more flashes of light that evening. We assumed that it had collected some sort of probe that was spying on us. This incident frightened my girlfriend, and she was no longer willing to investigate the flashing lights that persisted on several occasions. Not long after that, I became aware that I was being startled awake several nights a week at precisely 3:33 in the morning. It happened so frequently and was so unsettling that I began to research the condition that I may be suffering from. I tried the suggestions provided by other people experience, but came to no solid conclusion. Then I found a page that tied 3:33 a.m. to a UFO activity and connected the dots. Once I became afraid of the possibility of abduction, I discontinued discussing anything of the sort with my spouse. I did not want her to be afraid. Since then, we have moved twice, have not encountered any more lights. However, we also quit smoking and quit looking. We don't go out late at night. I forced myself to stop looking at the clock when I wake up at night. I also now use sleep-inducing drugs at night, and I can't remember my dreams anymore, which suits me just fine. I want to know if anyone else out there has seen this man or creature with a blue light, or are being monitored by flashing lights. They are not inconspicuous. I also need to know if my new daughter is safe. Is there any way to be safe? Will a secure bunker keep them out? Is there a possibility that these are non-violent, harmless watchers? Or are they all invasive abductors? The craziest part of that last part of the upload was in the very beginning. And he was experiencing all of these crazy goings on, but he saw the creature in the beginning when it approached whatever that watcher thing was with the blue visor. And listen to how he explained the creature one more time. The creature was similar to a deer in size and overall shape. It had dark brown, gray covering that I want to call fur, but was more likely leathery. It had a head similar to a dog with an elongated snout and short ears. It had the build of a greyhound with long legs supporting a smaller, slender frame. The legs were strange. They may have been bent backwards, but I can't be sure. Alright folks, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Guys, thank you for supporting the channel. Your support is truly what makes this channel so special and what continues to make it grow and go. With that being said, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there. Share a little bit of information with the people you love and care about that we share with each other here on a daily basis, and it may just save their life someday. God bless you all.